welcome to another video where we're going to be talking about more Lorcana cards. And I've got a couple of lists here for anyone who's been enjoying Churnadogs was the usual name it's used to be, but with no Churnabog. It's now called Chromodogs, or it's just called Dogs, or Lady in the Tramp Deck, or whatever you really want to call it. Dog seems to probably be the more common name. I've got two lists here. This was the one that I built up and started playing. And it's strangely enough, I got, of course, the list idea from Diego, who's done amazingly well with it. Like, this is, I think, I don't know if anyone else had the brain idea of Chromodogs, but I'm sure a lot of people had the idea of playing characters and playing a Chromocon to disrupt the board. But he created his own list. It was great. I had like the original one and I started testing and playing it, and this is where I left off at. And then I go see he got top 4 and a 5k, and our list I think was exactly the same. I'm not saying I have any at all input whatsoever into building his list, but I thought it was quite interesting that I ended up probably getting it correct. For once, I never guess lists correctly. I always get them completely wrong, and just make like really random stuff. But this is sort of looking to be the standard build for Chromodog, so shout out to Diego. It's definitely all his list and everything. And of course we've got another list as well. I'm just going to look over quickly a list I have not played too much, but I just want to always mention that there are options out there, and there's a lot of things going on with the Lady in the Tramp package. Like Lady in the Tramp as a, like, it is so built together quite well, with all of the cards working quite well, with the 7-cost Tramp, with the 2-cost buffing up with all of the Lady cards, and then you can use all these aggressive Amber cards and all these disruptive Emerald cards as well. This is Ghosties, like everyone knows Ghosties, the Lady in the Tramp guy. Like, he's the one everyone goes to for deck lists, and he did very well with the list. This is focusing more on Under the Sea, and I think if you're looking to try and maybe beat this possible uprising of Amber Steel, this deck could be for you. It has a fairly good game into Amber Steel, as you're able to build up the bodies, build up that 7-cost Tramp, and then Under the Sea everything, kind of really slowly turning down the tempo. And then of course, as you build up these characters on the board to achieve seeing Under the Sea, you can then full quest. Of course, that still requires, maybe they don't play any fire cannons on you, maybe they don't strength the rage and fire a lot of your stuff, but overall it seems to be fairly good. And also I hope they don't race you too far. So this is definitely a choice, I think, if you want to try and beat the Amber Steel that may be on the uprise after Sky's recent events, or if not, you just like playing Under the Sea. I think Lady in the Tramp deck uses it pretty damn good. I think it also has a fairly decent game into green blue, as you're able to just get wide and take their Under the Sea from their hand with the Ursula. So it's definitely one to look out for. I know he's all over the place from SSG. You know, you can go check out SSG stuff. I'm sure there's loads of streams of him playing this, or if not him, his teammates playing it. I'm sure he has a Metafire. I'm sure there's all those things out there. He's on Twitter and places like that. So you can definitely go out and find him. If you're more looking at playing the Under the Sea build, which, like I say, I think it's a bit more favoured into Amber Steel, and maybe is a bit weaker into, say, Blurple. I don't know, I'm saying that because I think the Elsa is something that really can beat setting up these big Under the Sea plays, but it's definitely looking quite powerful. We saw it over the weekend. It didn't have that much room to shine in, but as Amber Steel was really taking the spotlight. But I think this build's pretty cool. Going over to the one that I've been enjoying playing, and I've kind of really just been enjoying playing these, I'd say, like sort of simple set piece decks. And this one really has some simple lines to it, but they're very effective, especially into matchups into Blurple. You might still lose to your mid-rangey purple steel decks. Like, I think right now Chromodogs is, or just Dogs, you know, both of these decks have a very strange game into the mid-rangey things like purple steel. Sometimes you can get over the line, sometimes you can't. You lack strength for the raging fire. You can Ursula to remove theirs, but they're still going to have characters like Calhoun, especially in purple steel. You know, you can put decks like Ruby Steel in there as well, just for the fun. But it does lack sort of the ability to fight against them and fight back that well. You do have the 2-cost Tramp to buff up your characters and run them in to remove things. So that's a very useful tool for you, and you're able to sometimes achieve a way wider board. And the Chromocon can really just confuse a lot of players. Even me personally, like, I'll play against this deck, I'll think of a line, and I go, right, and I start with hitting that character, and they go, cool, I bounce back your other character, I bounce back your Rhino, and you think, oh, yeah, no, I completely forgot about that. So altogether, yeah, it still has I think its biggest killer is the Amethyst Steel, sort of Ruby. I'm going to keep mentioning Ruby Steel as well. Those sort of mid-rangey, play Calhoun, fight the board type of decks. But overall, how many you could very much go a day without seeing them. I think this deck can still beat Amber Steel if you're on the play. You're both your decks doing the same thing. You're just a bit quicker. Take their take their Strength of Rage and Fire at the hand and just full quest out and into Blurple. It has a very strong game into Blurple, and it's right now the Chromodog is taking full advantage of no one really playing any item break in the format. I think there's a world where people do put a lot of item break into their decks, and that can change things for us. And if they were to play Bengers and to play Wasabis maybe in Blurple, that would be very good counters for it. But it's how much you would want to dedicate to this matchup. This is not a very common deck, and it's also not a very common deck in the two choices of builds that you have for the deck. A lot of people are playing the Under the Sea build over the Chromocon deck, but so it's also like you're not even getting countered because no one's really thinking too much to it or dedicating too much to it. They're just going to go, if I see a Chromocon, I just have to play into it and see how it goes. So you have all those advantages of the card's pretty much going to be safe. The Chromocon, like the key component of the deck, is pretty much going to be safe, which is really awesome. And on top of that, it has just some of the most brokenly ever powerful lines. And the one that I want to mention that is the most useful thing here is that you have the ability to play 3 characters, play 1 on turn 1, play another 2 on turn 2, play the Chromocon down, and then you full quest and say, once you take something out, I'm going to be able to bounce things back to your hand. I'm going to mention the Blurple matchup because really this deck does farm the Blurple matchup. Whenever they hit into anything, you get to bounce something back. And with Blurple, they tend to just invest in 1 character a turn. And that's why Blurple also struggles to take out 2 things every turn. So, if they're going to go Rafiki, Ramp, Genie, and they take out one of your 3 2-questers, maybe you've done Daisy into double Merfolk, you're able to bounce back that Genie and say you can't take another hit. If you're able to play an Elsa, you can bounce it back and say you're going to have to replay and invest that 5 ink again to play the Elsa. You don't really mind too much about the Elsa exerting all the time because, you're a full quest deck. You turn everything sideways anyway, so them exerting stuff is not that majorly important to you. So you have that in your like arsenal weapons as well. So into Blurple, it's very good. Into some decks, like say Amethyst Steel and maybe Amber Steel sometimes. I think the Amber Steel is more of a 50-50 matchup whenever I've played it. But into Amethyst Steel, they're able to sort of play multiple characters down. Maybe they will play some removal to begin with, then play their characters down, or maybe remove some things, then play removal, then play the characters down that you just bounce back to their hand, and maybe just grind you out of the game that way. So again, the Amethyst Steel matchup can be fairly rough, but Blurple, I think green blue as well, if they're going to invest in Shift Baymax or Clarabelle and they take out like one of your Merfolks and you've Ursula to take their Under the Sea out of their hand, you can just keep racing ahead and sort of win the game just on pure tempo. And the card as well in this deck that I think whenever I pick up a Dog's deck, the thing that always makes me so excited to play this is the 5-cost lady. And what I like about this is it kind of can feel like Doc for you. I know it sounds weird, but it can kind of feel like the way that Doc works, but the 2 cards that you're getting back are most likely preferable cards that you would like. So if you manage to have a very strong opener with Daisy or Merfolk, and you got your ladies down as well, you got your 1-drop lady, or your 3-cost lady, and you manage to quest out for a bit, they'll fight the board to take things back. You can either shift this lady or you can play this lady, get 2 of those 1-drops back and put them on the board again, and you'll have amazing turns where you've got 6 ink or something, or maybe you've got to 4 ink. Let's say 4 ink's more achievable than 6 ink, but they will take your things out, take your Daisy or whatever, and you'll shift a lady, get back the Daisy, play it, and you can quest with your lady. So you've got a 4/4 that's quested for 2, you've got a 1/4 body on the board that's going to get you 2 more lore, and then on top of that, maybe if you've ever established the Chromocon or just established a wide board as well, you just can get to these really obnoxious points where you're just very much winning the game. And I think with that being said, it's just, the most common line with the deck is play 3 characters out and play a Chromocon. That is a lot more achievable than some of the lines with the Under the Sea deck. The Under the Sea Dogs deck, where it's aiming more towards building up this big board, finding the Under the Sea. It uses the 7-cost Tramp to find the Under the Sea quite commonly, and then singing it to do a complete board wipe, or trying to wipe the board as much as you can. They do play, I think it's Scrump in there. They do play that card as well, to minus some more and get some more stuff hit by the Under the Sea. But with this deck, I just feel like you're aiming to do these, 3 character wide openers, Daisy double Merfolk or Daisy and Lady Merfolk, and then you're aiming to play that Chromocon down, disrupt them, and full quest out. I think even into the Blurple matchup, if they're missing that one drop or they're missing that early board pressure, you know, if they miss one drop sail and you've gone double Merfolk into like another one drop character, you know, you're just going to win off that tempo. So it even has those fail safes as well. I think one of the more interesting mechanics as well, this is more of just naming tips and tricks with the deck, is the genie, the green genie that when you quest and turn it sideways, buffs all your characters up by 2, and it'll buff the one drop lady, the dual link lady. So she'll already be at 2 strength when you play one character, and then she's now questing for 3. So you have loads of options as well. You've got the buff Tramp as well, which means you can buff lady by however many characters you have on board, and it also counts itself, so it's really not that hard to achieve to get it to a 3/3, and then it can quest and gain you a ton of lore. And at any point as well, you can just keep setting up the board. We know how uninteractive set 9 has been, you know, trying to stop someone's board when they're just keeping everything upright. That can be quite hard. You can keep everything upright, play or shift the 6 cost Tramp, maybe on the 2 cost, or just maybe if you somehow manage to get to 6 ink, you sometimes do into Blurple, you can get it down, and then you can full quest and say, right, when you remove things, I'm going to gain a card draw, and I'm going to just basically replenish and play more characters on it. As you can see, the deck, the only real bricks you can have is drawing multiple Chromocons. Improvise is just really draw 1, so it's never really that bad. Besides that, all the other cards are either obnoxious bodies on the board or they quest for a little bit. So that's pretty good. And I think as well, you could go to 4 Chromocons. When I played it, I went down to 3 because Top Deck and Chromocon felt really rough, to be honest with you. And when you went for these heavy mulligans where you had 3 Chromocons, you likely were going to find one, especially with the Bobbies getting you that early sort of cycle as well. And that you go really quite heavy for the card, so you most likely will find it. And like I say, it can be the make or break if you're opening with 2 or 3 in hand. It's kind of rough. It's not like if you have 2 or 3 Tianas in hand where you can play them out and actually get some value out of it. It's like you only need 1 Chromocon really to get the value out of it. So 3 has felt fine. Just going for that heavy mulligan for that. But you can of course go to 4 if you're not feeling 3. But like I say, Diego was running 3 and it's done pretty well for him. And the Improvise as well. Improvise is a strange one. It's just sort of that card draw. And I think with illusions being so popular in this format, you know, people are playing the Argos, there's Giant Cobras, there's Rajas, there's Palace Guards. Just being able to pop those for such a cheap cost feels quite effective. So that's sort of in there as well. And as a 1 cost cycle, it's never bad. You can pair it with a lady, or if you ever need to do some board control, that's great. And a Go-Go, in my opinion, is a lot more powerful than it's ever been, because there's no real healing in the format. I think right now Baymax is the closest we've seen to actual proper effective healing, but to be honest with you, we don't have Popsicles anymore. And the only actually real healing we have in the format, I think, is Bell moving damage counters, if you want to count that as healing. But no, it's we don't really have any, so people will invest in things like Madam M Elephant. Of course, they move 2 damage across, but you'll have not just Madam M Elephant, even a Bell, even Elsa. You know, 2/5 Elsa is probably the best example. I don't know why it opened with the example of a character that can heal itself by moving 2 damage off. Elsa is a better one. You can get up to like 4 off that quite easily. You know, even the 6 cost Elsa as well. You can end up getting 5 lore off that, which are very much done. You can run some characters into it and just take your lore, or they might shift and start trading. I mean, heaven forbid they ever play a monster against you. You can sort of do a go-go on that as well for game. And go-go is always that scary thing that your opponent's thinking about of, right, I've got them locked out as 17 lore, but I can't really have a character with 3 damage on it. So my trades are going to have to be very quite bad going forward, you know, and spread the damage across multiple characters. So I think there's tons going for dogs, especially in this set. And I think as well, after this event, we've had recently where Sky topped, people are going to want to look at answers, and I think the Under the Sea build is pretty good, but I also don't think that Blurple's going anywhere. I think it's still going to be the highest meta share. It's still the highest number of decks in the top cut. I think there was 9 of them, and that, you know, it could have been a different day, and we could have seen a Blurple final very easily. And I think a lot of the Blurple is now just probably heavily tech for Amber Steel and just shove loads of 1-drops in the deck. So maybe Under the Sea version's pretty good, but if you want to use the Chromodog build, which I quite like, you can still keep tackling those Blurple decks and have a really good day. I think as well, Chromocon's just like this card that can sometimes melt someone's mind. It definitely does for me. If I've been playing against it for a long time, I'm just going to end up misplaying and not thinking the correct things. And at a big event, sometimes that's all you need. Just one misplay and you bounce the Calhoun back to their hand, and you can just win off that. The one last interesting card in here, before sort of wrap it up and say I like Chromodogs, and I like the name Chromodogs as well. I like it way more than Chernodogs. Is the 4-drop, the 3-drop Clarabelle. I think it's interesting. It's sort of card cycle, card draw. If you need to get to like better cards, establishing a 2/3. I think as well, your opponent might think that you have a Clarabelle shift, and you've got that sort of nice, interesting little interaction there where your opponent's like, well, I kind of want to remove that because you have Clarabelle shift. I might lose this game. But most likely it's just cycling through the deck to get to the more weighted cards, you know, the 2 questers, the go-go, the shift lines with the Tramp and the Lady, just getting to better cards really. But it's still not too bad, you know, 2/3 body as well. Sometimes you might need to fight, unlikely, but having a card in the deck that replaces itself is just pretty useful, especially where you don't have dock in here, you don't have the ways to just sort of keep drawing cards. You know, once you've gassed out, you play this card and it says draw 2 cards. The only thing you really have in the deck is Lady, the 5-cost Lady that does that, because I say it's like dock, but in a sense you get to pick the 2 cards you want. And let's be honest, whenever we play dock, we tend to just want to have 2 daisies, or, you know, 2 questers that are really cheap in our hand. We want a daisy and a Nala or something. That's most likely the best outcome from a dock. So Lady being able to basically pick those cards as long as they're in the discard is pretty good. And I've noticed as well there's a lot of depth to dogs. You know, I mentioned the very easier lines where it's 1/1 into Chromocon. That's pretty good, but you can also do things like discard with Bobby. You know, I'll save that card for later. Revival with Lady, like maybe discard the 2-cost Tramp, get it back with Lady, then pay only 1 to play the 2-cost Tramp, buff something up and take something out, and you can do some amazing like manipulation with the discard, even with Chernobog gone in the set. You know, there's still loads you can do with this, and I really do like that. If you watch Ghosty play, especially if he's under the sea build, I think it's Sea Dog that he's called it, which is cool. You just see some really interesting plays that I just didn't think of, different lines, you know, like I say, putting something in the discard, saving it for later, getting it back with one of your retrieval abilities, and then playing it out and getting some value there. So I think it's a really cool deck to pick up. I think the Chromocon one is definitely a lot more straightforward in what you're trying to do. You're basically trying to just really beat the Blurple matchups, and having that 1-2-3 open into play a Chromocon, and then hopefully you get over the line of all of your aggressive things. You know, maybe you're just recycling Lilos and every turn they have to hit it, and they get a Chromocon trigger, which allows you to bounce. You know, you can do some really cool stuff with it. But I think it's a really interesting deck. I think it's one as well that it seemed fun. It seemed fun to play on testing and play on different environments, but I've actually seen it to kind of perform quite well, even though it hasn't been making its top cuts yet. It's done well in 5Ks, it's done well in smaller events. It did not, of course, top cut in the CCQ, but let's be honest, that was quite a tight top cut, you know, and very small. You know, half of it was basically Blurple. So if you take that into account, maybe you bring Chromodogs and you can just win all those Blurple matchups, get into the top cut, and then win all of those Blurple matchups. As long as you don't see any of the purple still along the way, I think you should be fine. So yeah, I really back this build quite a lot more. But I think the Under the Sea one is very good. I think if you're a bit more of a green-yellow discard player and you liked doing those big puzzle piece gameplays, it feels a lot more fun for you. But, you know, Chromodogs is really here, and I think it's really good. I think as long as Burple's here to stay, as long as big ramp decks that invest in 1 or 2 characters are here, you know, it'll be here to stay. Unless somehow we end up with 50% meta shares of Chromodogs and people are going to start countering it. But as I say, you know, you have to force them to have that answer. They have to have that wasabi, and on top of that, sometimes you can just win on pure aggro. You know, you can do triple 2 questers out of the gate, you know, by turn 2 into just playing Lady into a Lilo, and then at some point you go for game. Like, that happens as well. You'll win games definitely without Chromocon as well. So very interesting deck, very cool. Shout out to Diego, of course, who ended up making this and carrying this and just letting us see it as well. It's a really cool creation.